Hey everyone, Dane here from Moving to Canada. I am filming this video on Tuesday morning, March 31st. It is about 10 a.m. here in Montreal, and I am bringing you guys the latest updates to Canadian travel restrictions and changes to immigration policy as they relate to COVID-19. As you know, COVID-19 is currently a global pandemic. It is intensifying a health crisis here in Canada, and due to this health crisis, the Canadian government has introduced some sweeping, drastic changes to immigration policy. Our team here at Moving to Canada is doing our best to keep you guys updated on what those changes are and how they're impacting prospective newcomers and newcomers who are already in the country. So I'm here to bring you the latest info on that. If you've been following our feed for the last 2 weeks, you'll be aware that these changes have been coming out every couple of days, and often they will contradict one another. There will be something that's not clarified in one change, and then a new change will be brought out a couple of days later. So we've had some confusion and a lack of clarity regarding exactly what these travel restrictions are, who's impacted, and who's exempt. Thankfully, in the last couple of days, we appear to have some general consensus across Canadian departments as to who is impacted by these travel restrictions and who is exempt from these travel restrictions. So I'm going to go over the information that we do have available now. We're hoping that this will more or less remain steady for the foreseeable future. However, as you're aware, this situation is rapidly evolving, as is the response to it. So there's always the chance that these things could continue to shift in the future. We will, of course, stay on top of that and be sure to bring any changes to you guys as soon as we receive them. If you do want to stay up to date on the latest information, we're actually operating a coronavirus news feed. So if you just check out the description of this video, see a link to our website, movingtocanada.com, and on that website, our coronavirus news feed is being updated as we receive information. So the information in this video might not be what's actually happening if you're watching this a couple of days, a couple of weeks from now, but you can rest assured that the information in that COVID news feed will be updated. So check that out if you want the latest updates. So let's go over where we're at with updates to Canadian travel restrictions. For those of you who haven't been following along, as of March 16th, so about 2 weeks ago, Canada announced that they were going to begin closing borders to foreign nationals. So as of this point, Canada has closed its international airports, so air borders, as well as the land border with the United States. All of that is closed to foreign nationals unless you meet one of a handful of exceptions. And I will go over those exemptions with you now, but before I do, please be advised that even if you meet one of these exemptions, if you are eligible to travel to Canada at this time, once you arrive in Canada, there is now a mandatory quarantine of 14 days, so you'll be asked to self-isolate for 14 days upon arriving in the country. This is not optional. It's actually now being enforced. So if you fail to respect the terms of that quarantine, you can be fined or receive jail time. So just be aware of that if you're coming, and make sure you have plans in place for how you are going to isolate once you arrive. Additionally, if you are symptomatic, if you have symptoms of COVID and you try to board a plane to Canada, you will also be denied entry. You won't be able to board that plane. They are denying boarding to people who are presenting symptoms, even if you do have status in Canada. So, who is exempt from these travel restrictions? The exemptions include Canadian citizens, Canadian permanent residents, okay? As well as the immediate family members of those two groups. So immediate family members of Canadian citizens and immediate family members of Canadian permanent residents. What counts as an immediate family member? Spouse, common law partner, dependent child, the dependent child of your dependent child, or your parent or guardian. Those are the exemptions for immediate family members. This is something we've received clarification on recently for temporary foreign workers. Temporary foreign workers will still be able to enter Canada according to government guidelines, which were officially published at the end of last week. This will include those who have been approved for a work permit and those who already hold a work permit. So if you have your work permit in your hands, you'll still be able to enter the country. And if you have an approval letter, this is called a letter of introduction or a port of entry letter. According to these guidelines, you will be able to cross the border. However, we have heard anecdotally from some of our community members that they have been turned away at the border with their letter of introduction or their POE letter over the last couple of days. Of course, these exemptions only were published officially at the end of last week, so it's possible that that information just hasn't trickled down to the frontline policies of CBSA agents, that's Canada Border Services agents at the border. So just be aware of that. It might be worth checking into it if you're trying to use that LOI or POE letter to get into Canada. International students. If you had your study permit or you were approved for your study permit before March 18th, you will still be able to enter Canada before March 18th. You had your study permit or were approved. Similarly, PR applicants, permanent residence applicants who had been approved for PR, so you received your COPR prior to March 18th, you will still be able to enter Canada. So you received your COPR prior to March 18th, and the exemption actually goes right up to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's Toronto time, on March 18th. You will be able to enter Canada. There are a handful of other exemptions for things like diplomats, air crews, people who are transiting between countries. So in those cases, you may also be able to enter Canada. But for those more detailed exemptions, you can check out that article on our website. Again, the description's in the link is in the description of this video, so you can check out our COVID news feed for the detailed exemptions. Another note here on the land border closure, so the closure of the U.S. border between Canada and the U.S. Canada has restricted all non-essential travel, but if you are part of an essential service, so you're part of a supply chain or you provide some sort of vital employment service between the two countries, you should still be able to cross that border. But if you are wondering if you qualify as an essential service, check with your employer or call ahead, check with the border agents. I can't confirm exactly who will be able to cross, but if you think you are exempt, just make sure you check that in advance so you're not turned away on the day of. Now, we do have a couple of common questions that we've been receiving from our community members. I'm going to go through a couple of these answers here. If there is anything that we don't answer, feel free to drop your questions in the comments. We'll do our best to come back and answer those questions later on. And we're, of course, keeping a record of the questions we're getting, and we're trying to add the most common questions to our COVID newsfeed. Again, link in the description. So, if you are inside of Canada, are you still able to travel to the border to flagpole to activate your status? Flagpoling is a pretty common immigration procedure here. You drive to the U.S. border, you exit Canada, re-enter, and you're able to activate your status at that time. Right now, IRCC is not allowing people to do that. You cannot flagpole at this time. Okay? Now, related, what if you're in Canada as a student, a worker, a visitor, and your status is going to expire? In this case, you have to make sure that you apply to extend your stay, okay? IRCC has put in place some special measures for people in that situation. So you can check out IRCC's special measures for temporary residents who are stuck inside Canada, and make sure that you follow their instructions to extend your status. You don't want to be in Canada while you're out of immigration status. This can cause some major problems in future immigration applications. We're all spending most of our days at home right now, so take some of that extra time and check out how to extend your status just to make sure that you stay in good status while you're here. What if your application deadline is approaching and you can't get all the documents? Canada has said that they're not going to refuse applicants due to a lack of documentation at this point, simply because people can't get all of these documents required due to COVID restrictions. So you can still submit your application if it's incomplete. It's just anywhere you're missing a document, make sure you submit a statement explaining why that document's missing. Outline that it's due to COVID, and IRCC has stated that they will be allowing exemptions for completing those applications. Okay. Is Canada still processing immigration applications? Getting this question a lot. Yes. IRCC has stated they're still processing applications, but at this time they have announced that there are delays that should be expected. So IRCC is operating limited staff. They're doing a lot of complicated work in a very short span of time. So be patient with them and anticipate delays on your applications. And finally, are invitations still being issued for Express Entry and for IEC, for International Experience Canada? For Express Entry, yes, we had a draw take place as recently as last Monday, so March 23rd. So based on that, it appears that they're continuing Express Entry draws at this time. There's no guarantee that will continue. The regular schedule will continue, but we will be monitoring that as well. For the IEC Working Holiday Program, we actually haven't seen invitations be issued for that since March 13th, so it appears they might be pausing or delaying that, but there's been no official statement in that regard. So we're going to keep monitoring that situation, and we'll update you if and when there is an official statement from IRCC. Great. So those are the main questions we've been receiving, as well as the major updates that have come out relating to travel to Canada immigration applications and the response to COVID-19. Again, if anything wasn't answered here, please feel free to drop your question into the comments. We'll do our best to respond to some of those questions. And I do promise you that if there are further changes, we're hoping that these might be some of the final changes. It seems like everything's sort of settling. Most of the questions have been answered, but of course these things can always change. The pandemic is constantly evolving, as is the policy response to that. So if there are changes, we will bring them to you as soon as we receive them. The best place to look for the most recent updates is the COVID news feed, which is linked in the description of this video. And as we head into the month of April, it seems like it's going to be a rather stressful month all around the world as we all try to respond to this health crisis as best we can. So all that I can say is that from myself and from the entire team at Move Into Canada, we wish you guys the best of luck in the challenges ahead. Take care of yourselves, take care of your families, and we'll do our best to keep you guys posted on all of the latest Canadian immigration information. Thanks so much. See you next time.